Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order tonight's meeting and members of council, members of our staff, and members in the gallery, and those of you who join us tonight on Zoom. I'd like to start off today's meeting with the land acknowledgement. We will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathering on land that has Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We would like to recognize that we are in the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory, and the land on which we are gathered today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. Specifically, we acknowledge the neighboring community of Mishpicon First Nation, for whom we have great respect. We also recognize of all Indigenous people, including the Métis, in shaping and strengthening the province of Ontario. Miigwech. We'll now move on to this disclosure of pecuniary interest. We'll move to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Opato. All in favor? Without further ado, we'll move on to item number 4, delegations and presentations. We have 2 this evening. First up is Bannikin Travel and Tourism to present on the Wawa Tourism Study. So, gentlemen, I will remind you that we have a very busy agenda, so we've got 15 minutes slotted for your presentation this evening, with a few minutes thereafter for questions and comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pito. We will just share our screen as well. And just confirming that we're okay to start.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So good evening, members of council. Good evening, everyone. And thank you all for the opportunity to share the project progress update on the development of the municipality of Wawa's 5-year tourism action plan. We're going to be aiming to keep to those 15 minutes. So just to start off with some quick introductions, both my colleague James and I are going to be partaking in the presentation. But before we get started, we just want to briefly introduce ourselves and our colleagues who are not joining us today for the presentation, but are key members of the team and the progress of developing Wawa's upcoming 5-year tourism action plan. So to start, my name is Camilo Montoya Guevara. I am the Vice President at Bannikin and have been the project manager working closely with municipality staff, more specifically Maury, Alex Patterson, and Jesse on the research and development of the 5-year tourism action plan and the related landscape assessment research and study. James, I'll pass it over to you to say a quick hello.
Hello, everyone. So my name is James Arteaga, and I'm the tourism developer at Bannikin. And for this project, I've been one of the research and engagement coordinators. So working throughout the project through the different research methods that we've been using. And great to be here.
Thank you, James. And as you can see, we also have Trevor Jonas Benson, who is the Bannikin president and CEO, acting as the tourism development strategist for the project. We've been working with Caroline Morrow, who is our tourism development specialist, as the research and engagement coordinator for the project. And last but definitely not least, we've been working with Pat Forrest, who is an external consultant based in Northern Ontario, in Thunder Bay to be specific. And she's been working with us as the Northern Ontario tourism specialist for the project. At Bannikin, just so you're all aware, we are a Canadian-based professional services company that specializes in strategy and development and partnerships and growth in the travel and tourism industry. And as part of our strategy and development work, we research and develop tourism strategies with destination stakeholders. We also co-design strategic business and product development plans and programs with tourism and tourism-related organizations and government bodies. We're very passionate about co-creating value in the tourism sector, and we're especially driven to support community-based projects that lie in the interface between adventure, food, culture, and this is something that we've identified across the research. Wawa really has a lot to pull from. In terms of the next couple minutes that we'll be spending together, noting that the presentation is 15 minutes, we want to keep it focused on providing an overview of the project, as well as an update on the analysis and preliminary considerations coming out of the research analysis. So we started with some introductions. I'll be providing a project overview. We'll then pass it over to James, who will share key research insights from the project. And then I'll take it back and share some of the preliminary considerations coming out of the study, and then information on next steps for the project. And we've noted that there's time at the end for your questions and comments, and we're really looking forward to engaging with all of you for that as well. In terms of the project overview, we started the project in July, and at the onset of the project, we came together with the project team from the municipality to draft a specific goal and objectives for the project process. The goal, as you can see here on the screen, is that by March 2023, which is the project end date, the municipality of Wawa will have a comprehensive and actionable 5-year tourism action plan to implement in collaboration with partners. The plan will establish an inspiring vision for Wawa and set the foundation to build resilience in and diversify its economy through tourism and in collaboration with community and tourism partners. Toward achieving this goal, we also identified specific project objectives. And although I won't go into those in detail right now, we do want to highlight just how the project methodology has come together. We identified 4 distinct phases to carry out the project. The first phase presented here, which is project initiation, management, and communications, was focused on really setting up the project and project management smoothly, with the initial briefing meeting that kicked off the project on July 19th, the development of the critical path, and the work plan confirmation for the project. The next phase focused on setting up the research and engagement activities, and a highlight here was the development of a research and engagement plan that really outlines how research will be carried out and has been carried out over the last couple months. The third phase is focused on the tourism landscape assessment, and this is a phase that we're closing off now as we head towards the end of the year. It was our biggest phase in the project, as it included the bulk of research and engagement activities, as well as the analysis and the drafting of the tourism landscape assessment report, which included the analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. And then last phase is phase 4, which is action planning and report development. And that's the phase we're moving into with the municipality project team, where we'll be really taking the insights and key research highlights toward identifying areas of opportunity that municipality can act on. And key to this process is answering the how, what can be done by the municipality with support from the community and its partners towards growing and really moving tourism in Wawa into the future. Just briefly, some of our research methods employed across the project. In terms of primary research methods, we had a visitor and consumer survey that was circulated to visitors to Wawa as an online survey accessible at the Tourism Information Center and at various visitor-facing businesses. This was made available from September into October, so towards the end of the summer season and the beginning of the fall season. And here we just want to acknowledge that because of the timeline of the project, we really had to prioritize getting this out as soon as possible. And it also just means that the data collected for the visitor survey is limited to only visitors coming in 2022 at the end of the summer and at the beginning of the fall season. But we've been able to supplement this data through previous data sets from research surveys conducted by Algoma Country and conducted by the tourism information staff. We also had the opportunity to visit Wawa for a 3-day, 2-night in-market research trip. And this was really an opportunity to experience and explore Wawa as a place to visit. We conducted 16 key informant interviews with key informants identified with the municipality. And back in November, we held a partners focus group where 7 different tourism and community partners came together to share their perspective of tourism in Wawa, as well as potential areas of alignment and support for future tourism activity. And then the last one to highlight here is we held 2 in-person community engagement sessions where a total of 18 community members came together to learn about the project and share their perspectives on the future of tourism in Wawa. The secondary research methods included a background document review, so really exploring the context and background setting documents that need to be kept in mind and will inform the action plan, and then a best practice research process into 4 comparable and aspirational destinations. These included Blind River and Kenora in Northern Ontario, Mackinac City in Michigan, and Moab in Utah. So with that overview of the methodology, I'll pass it over to you, James, to share the key research insights.
So based on those methodology methods that Camilo mentioned, we'll share today some select strengths and weaknesses, as well as some of the perspectives for the future of tourism in Wawa. So one of the main strengths identified in the research was the strong outdoor offerings and picturesque landscapes that Wawa had, including the trails, the vistas, the fishing and hunting options in the area. And when we specifically were asking key informants to describe Wawa, they described it using mentioning outdoor activities, the landscape, as well as when looking at Wawa's how it's positioned online and the tourism assets that are displayed. This was also reflected, as well as the motivations that a lot of visitors had for coming to Wawa were reflected in this as well, coming for the outdoors. Another 2 strengths identified were the rich and varied local stories and histories, including First Nation stories, and the connection to the Group of 7, as well as a variety of local artisans and craft products. And then so when we asked key informants to describe unique assets or hidden gems in Wawa, cultural elements, including local artisans and links to the Group of 7, were brought up more frequently. The proximity of key assets in areas such as Lake Superior and Michipicoten River Village. The beaches and marina were also mentioned as key strengths for Wawa. And so when we asked industry and residents specifically to describe Wawa, most highlighted qualities including being a great place for the outdoor activities, including hunting and fishing, which was supported by their Wawa's proximity to Lake Superior and other bodies of water. And finally, Wawa's position along the Trans-Canada Highway, including the quality of roads and wayfinding infrastructure leading into Wawa, was something else that came up as a strength, as well as the 4-season tourism offerings, so including the different trails, snowmobile trails, and camping that's available throughout the year. And when we asked specifically key informants to describe Wawa, they mentioned Wawa being a small town, but a regional hub, a destination for all seasons, but with offerings that change. And when asking what makes Wawa unique in comparison to other communities and destinations across Northern Ontario, one of the top 3 responses from industry and residents included the location along the highway. When we go into looking at some of the pain points or some of those weaknesses identified through the research, one of the main responses was the availability of accommodations, as many of these are booked by contract workers. So through our in-market research and key informant interviews, it was evident that most attractive visitor accommodations aren't always prioritized for visitor use. And additionally, there is an issue related to the availability of places for visitors to stay overnight, as many of these motels and other accommodations are fully at full capacity hosting contract workers. Another 2 weaknesses pointed out in the research were the lack of retail offerings, including lack of businesses with outdoor spaces, as well as a lack of food and beverage offerings. So when we asked industry what was needed to strengthen the tourism offering in Wawa, most cited increasing retail offerings, including, for example, currency exchange services, outdoor equipment, retail spaces, groceries, and artisan shops, as well as the increase in food and beverage offerings. Additionally, limited business hours and limited range and availability of activities and experiences in Wawa were another two key pain points identified. So when specifically industry highlighted the need to increase business hours as well as increase experiences, including tours and outdoor activities, as well as increasing accommodations and camping facilities. And similarly, residents also identified the need to increase food and beverage offerings and increase retail offerings. Finally, the state of the downtown core, specifically its state of appeal to visitors, was another weakness identified through the research. And specifically, key informants voiced the need to action to strengthen the tourism offering, specifically mentioning the need to improve the downtown feel in the future. And I'll pass it on to Camilo to talk a little bit about the future of tourism.
Yes. So as James kind of took us through some of the select strengths, select weaknesses, there's been some perspectives that have resonated across the research and come up repeatedly. We've heard these specific perspectives on the potential for development, as well as ideas for the future of tourism from the stakeholders that have been engaged. The first one we want to highlight is really the recurring focus on the need to infuse more life and appeal into the downtown. When asked what is needed, as James mentioned, to strengthen the tourism offering in Wawa, a lot of, industry, residents, key informants have focused on this aspect as really an initial and important area of work, recognizing that it is not something that changes overnight and requires a lot of planning, investment in infrastructure. This was also a resounding point at the community engagement sessions, where participants focused on the downtown as an area that in the future has drastically changed. We did a visioning exercise with them, and some of those descriptions around the future of the downtown, including it being cozy, appealing, reflecting the beauty of the landscape that Wawa is surrounded by, and a space that boasts a variety of local shops, food and beverage options, and really chief among these for residents is the downtown as a place to relax and socialize, having places like cafes, a brewery, and patios for residents and visitors alike. The second perspective that has come across quite strongly throughout the research is tourism having the potential to diversify the economic opportunities and enhance cultural life in Wawa. So when we asked stakeholders around some of the positive impacts that tourism could have, key informants highlighted the economic benefit the tourism development would bring, as well as the ability to use tourism for community development and improving community life. Key informants mentioned how tourism can provide access to additional resources and attractions for residents, as well as add life and energy to the downtown. The third perspective that's been shared across the research is the recognition for the need to plan to avoid negative impacts of tourism, such as competing demands on infrastructure or over-tourism. This was really the main negative impact that's been highlighted across the research process and different engagements is the risk for over-tourism. So we're seeing an awareness and valuing of planning for whatever tourism activity is to follow, whatever the future of tourism in Wawa looks like, for it to be a planned endeavor. And then the last perspective to focus is really the room to strengthen connections between existing assets, stories, groups, and individuals as part of Wawa's image and identity. Some of these existing assets that could be grown include connections between the outdoors, as James highlighted as a main draw, and some of those cultural narratives, individuals, groups that are there, and strengthening connections between different types of assets so that when a visitor comes, they're able to have a fuller experience of what life in Wawa is like, what tourism in Wawa is like. So kind of jumping from those perspectives, we want to provide some just idea of the preliminary considerations. Now that we have gone through the integrated analysis process of the project, some of which has been highlighted by James and myself, we're at a point where we're able to start identifying preliminary considerations that will inform the upcoming action planning process. So in short, we've gotten an understanding and answered a lot of the what, and now we're moving into considering the how. how can opportunities be leveraged? How can the municipality act upon this? So some preliminary considerations informing that process are the need to foster connections and collaboration across industry, across partners, and across the community. We've also seen an opportunity in increasing the positive impacts of tourism assets and demand generators. So something that's come through the research is the opportunity to, again, connect how visitors are engaging with specific assets, as well as the social, environmental, and economic impacts that they are making while they're visiting Wawa. Something that has stood out, for example, with an asset like Lake Superior Provincial Park being so close to Wawa, considering how can visitors to the park be better connected to the infrastructure in Wawa, the experiences and businesses in Wawa, so that their visit to the overall region is making a bigger economic impact in Wawa, as opposed to only participating in a hike or going to the beach, which are activities that are incredibly fulfilling and valid, but leave very little economic footprint within the community. The third area of consideration is improving and strengthening the visitor economy. So this is connected to the previous consideration I've just highlighted, as there's an opportunity to better prepare visitors to plan a visit to Wawa. And this includes sharing information on how to structure their overall journey and really have an intentional visit into town. Throughout the visitor and consumer survey, we found that the majority of visitors are stopping at the Tourism Information Center and coming to Wawa for a shorter visit. So there's room to grow the length of visitation through some of the experiences, activities available for people coming into the community. We saw that Wawa has a strong base of repeat visitors with very positive visitor sentiment. So growing these visitor segments to come back across the year and inviting them to share their experience online and through word of mouth is an opportunity. And a way to leverage this opportunity is focusing dedicated attention and supports towards new experience development, encouraging businesses to innovate, and again, facilitating those connections between different assets that inform tourism in Wawa. And then just the last preliminary consideration that we'll highlight is recognizing tourism development as an avenue for community growth. So here, thinking about and planning for how dedicated tourism development can deliver value to all residents and be recognized as such among those members of the community. This is important to build buy-in and excitement for tourism development, because we've seen across research we've conducted, previous work, and our experiences working in tourism planning, that tourism growth has a potential to influence and push things like placemaking for the town, growing pride of place among residents as well. And as you would have noticed in the research that we've shared, a lot of the challenges, weaknesses, strengths being highlighted for Wawa as a place to visit are not exclusive to tourism. Challenges around housing and staffing impact other industries, but they need to be considered as well when planning for the future of tourism. And so with this in mind, recognizing that there is a role for tourism to play in informing the activities and initiatives of other municipal departments, partner activities, and community development initiatives. So with that, we'll just move towards wrapping up our presentation. First, by saying thank you for the time, and we're looking forward to your comments and questions. And to give you an idea of the next steps, we're at a place in the project where the landscape assessment report is currently being finalized through municipal staff and the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee members' review and input. From the landscape assessment report, we will be moving into the first action planning session this Thursday to discuss the vision for tourism and the areas of opportunity. And then we'll follow that with a second action planning session to start talking about the specific actions, those initiatives that are coming up from the areas of opportunity. We will also be sharing a survey with council members, so yourselves, from tomorrow into the end of the year, as an opportunity to invite your input and perspectives on the project and your understandings of the priorities for tourism growth in Wawa. We will take the rest of December and the beginning of January to push the identified actions that we developed through the action planning sessions, and then we'll begin drafting the finalized tourism action plan report in January and across February. The report will also be designed in February, so being finalized then, and then we will see you all again mid-February to present on the finalized report and action plan towards the very end of February 2023. So with that, again, thank you for the time and looking forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Camilio. Councillor Hatfield, I'll ask you first if you have any questions or comments.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Do you deal or work with Nodo when you're doing all this?
And is that Northern Ontario Tourism Organization?
Oh, tourist outfitters, yeah.
We have, through the industry survey that James mentioned, we conducted. So that was something that went through to outfitters as well as hunting and fishing lodges in the area, recognizing that when we think and have come to understand tourism in Wawa, it's definitely what happens in Wawa, so the municipal boundaries, but also what's taking place at those further afield places to reach that visitors need to go through Wawa to get to. Does that answer the question, Councillor Hatfield?
Yes. Maybe I'm not really explaining myself that well, but I'll work on that question through Christmas and see how I get.
Perfect. And all right, my email is on the screen, so please feel free to reach out with any questions.
Councillor Cannon? No. Thank you very much, Camilio, for your. I look forward to receiving the council survey and being able to provide additional comments. But it looks like the study is going well. And we also look forward to receiving the landscape assessment, because I think that'll give us a little bit more, a clearer line of sight of how the project is going. So, presentation tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Pilon, and thank you, council members, for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent. We'll move on to our second delegation from Watson and Associates. Regarding the water and wastewater rate study. Good evening.
Good evening, members of council. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. My colleague Byron Tan and myself are pleased to provide you with a presentation of the study we've undertaken on your behalf.
Wonderful.
I think Byron, do you have control for the presentation?
So
okay.
before you jump in, I'll just preface your study with just a comment. We have about 15 minutes for the presentation, and we've allotted 10 to 15 minutes for comments. Certainly, we understand that this is a pretty big report. So if we do want or need to go ahead, we'll certainly welcome you back meeting in 2023, if that's all right. Perfect.
That's fine, and I will move through quickly. So, oh, I'm sorry. And Navreet Bains is also a colleague of mine, is also on the call. I didn't see her initially, so I do apologize. So, Byron, can you bring it up, please? And go to the first page. So this is just a quick overview of what we wish to touch upon, talk about the study purpose, move through to touch on legislation, because since Walkerton, we're heavily legislated on the water and the wastewater, and then go through a number of different items which assist us in undertaking the calculations. Next slide. So one of the key things is looking, especially with changes in legislation with respect to asset management, looking at the longer term needs to replace or refurbish or to enhance your water and wastewater capital is becoming extremely important, and I'll touch on that in a minute. With the capital, obviously, we need to finance those expenditures, and that could be either by reserves or direct transfers from grants, from the rates, grants, or even issuing debt. So we'll talk about the financing and how that might affect the rates, and then we'll provide you with preliminary rates for your consideration. The last thing is there is a mandatory requirement to submit a financial plan to the province, and extending from the work that we've done on the actual rate study, we'll complete the financial plan so that you can submit that to the province as part of receiving your license to run your water and wastewater systems. Next slide. I won't go through in a lot of detail on the legislative background, but we are heavily regulated since Walkerton, which was it was a sad occurrence that happened actually in 2001, where 5,200 people were made sick because of a problem with the Walkerton system, and 7 people died. As a result, we had this massive, very large inquiry, which lasted a couple of years. I was fortunate enough to be in 2 of the 6 expert panels, and there was a lot of legislative changes. The key ones that we're looking at right now are the Safe Drinking Water Act, which is why we have to prepare the financial plan. But this financial plan is really an interim piece of legislation until the Water Opportunities Act can be fully implemented. And that can't be implemented until we have the asset management plan developed under the Infrastructure to Jobs and Prosperity Act. So these are key legislative drivers for the work that we're doing this evening. Next slide. Excuse me. Starting right now is what your present rates are. Currently, you, like many municipalities, charge a monthly amount for your water and your wastewater system. That bill, that fixed portion of the bill, is to basically recover a certain amount of the costs, more of the fixed costs in your system, but as well, if people go to Florida or wherever during the winter, obviously you're still maintaining the system for when they come back, so they should be contributing. On top of that, there's a volume charge for the amount of usage on the water. So that's the consumption side, and we use that billing through the meters to also help us impose a volume charge for the wastewater. Next slide. Excuse me. Right now, in total, you've got about approaching 1,300 water users and approaching 1,200 wastewater users. This is important because once again, we measure the customers and those fixed charges in calculating the bills, as well as we extend off of this information to estimate the amount of volume that they'll consume in a year. Next slide. And this is just to identify that, the forecast over time with water, which is the top kind of darker blue. The first table talks about a slow increase in the number of customers who will hook into the system over time, starting in and around 6 customers in 2022. And additionally, by the time we hit the end of 2032, rising to an increase of about 22 customers. Those new customers, based on an average consumption of 180 cubic meters per year, provides the second table, which is the amount of volume we would estimate for that volume rate that'll help contribute towards funding the system. We've done a similar type of calculation on the lower green tables. Those are for wastewater, and you can see we have a slightly lower amount of starting customers, and the forecast of new customers is is a little bit lower than the water assumptions. Next slide. Turning to the capital side, so we've been working with staff to identify potential capital works that need to be addressed over the next 10 years. We've looked at the need, the timing, the costs. As well, as I've noted, the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act is moving us towards a long-term asset management plan. So towards the latter part of the forecast, we've made provisions for either further constructing or rehabilitating existing infrastructure, or contributing monies into the reserves so that we can pull it out later to help fund those expenditures. Next slide. And you can see here in total, the forecast for water is about $5.7 million. You can see there's a considerable amount of those expenditures in the first half of the forecast. The water intake improvements, about $3.2 million. And then you can see there's a number of other improvements totaling about another $1 million. On the wastewater side, in total, we've got about $700,000. A lot of that to do with asset management, but that kicks in generally on the latter part of the forecast. Next slide. Not a lot of magic in funding these capital costs. You can either, if we have the availability of grants, that's well welcomed from the province. It is very limited these days. However, I'll show you in a moment. You've been fortunate to capture a little bit of government grants. And if you don't get government grants, for the most part, what you're doing is funding it from your own resources, which could be direct transfers from your operating budget to fund that capital. Or you might transfer the money from the operating into reserves and kind of stockpile it and use it to fund these works. Or if the works are needed before you have the funds available, then you'll be issuing debt. Next slide. So if we take a look at the funding, well, we start off our existing reserve fund balances. These are combined right now for water and wastewater. You got a little over 700,000 for equipment reserves, about 300,000 for general capital, and then for rate stabilization, which is really for the operating side of your budget, is to have a little bit of money there in case you estimated a certain amount of funding, from your water and wastewater rates, but it didn't materialize. So you've got a little bit of funds there to help smooth out those uncollected amounts. So we've moved forward. We've split these into water versus wastewater in order to undertake our calculations, because, as I say, we have to file a financial plan with the province, and we need to identify those funds on the water side. Next slide. So the financing, you can see here that we've got provincial federal grants, $2.7 million plus OCFA, 300,000. The residual of the 5.7 million will come from debenturing, direct contributions from the operating budget to fund those works, and then from reserve funds, about $1.4 million. Most of the wastewater is going to come from basically your ratepayers. There's a small amount of grants that'd be available, but most of the 700,000 you'll be raising directly from your rates. Next slide. An important thing, and this is why the province has put into place the Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, which is your asset management legislation. Excuse me, they want you to start to move towards sustainability. If you look at what the value is of the water that you have in the ground and the treatment facilities, similarly with the water, wastewater, you've spent about $76 million. You've invested $76 million to get the water into the homes, and then as they shower or use washroom facilities or do the dishes, etc., to take that out and to treat the wastewater. That $76 million translates into an investment of $39,000 per customer for water, and another almost $22,000 per customer for wastewater. So you can see there's a sizable investment that's been made, and this is why the province is moving towards having municipalities plan, document their assets, value it, and take a look at a condition and how they're performing, and develop longer-term financial plans to address that infrastructure so you continue to be able to provide these services to your residents. Next slide. Here we can see for water, you can see the assets, and generally based on age and to some extent performance, this is kind of the timeline on when things should be replaced. So you can see in the early first 10 years, you can see we've got probably about $5 million in needs. As we move out past that point in time, you know, the increase in the potential expenditures to replace or rehabilitate those assets increases significantly. You can see in 2050, I guess 2053, we're looking at about a $10 million investment. So these are the types of things we have to plan over a longer period of time. On the wastewater side, which is the next slide, you can see a similar type of pattern, a little bit more aggressive in the 2036 period, where we've got some sizable expenditures that need to be made. So we need to start setting some money aside into the reserves to basically bank some dollars to address these large expenditures coming up in the future. Next slide. On the operating budgets, right now we're experiencing a sizable amount of inflation. Just the CPI in Ontario is running at about 6.5%, or actually the most recent is actually around 7%. So the assumptions we've made over the next few years, you can see we've had a little bit higher expenditures in the early part of the forecast, staging down to a more historic level. So the utilities and chemicals, which is hydro and chemicals, they normally run higher than the general inflation. So we're seeing about 8% right now in the increases, and we'll stage that down to about 5% in the latter part of the forecast. With the rest of the expenditures, we're starting at about 5% and staging back down to around 2% in the latter part of the forecast. Next slide. Excuse me. If we put this all together, we're just trying to present graphically how your operating budget for water would increase over time. You can see that the operating cost, which is in the blue, starts off at about $700,000 and increases to almost $1 million over the 10-year planning horizon. Your capital starts off at about $200,000. So this is debt payments. Those debt payments are basically fixed across the 10 years. So they stay at about $216,000. We have reserves and other transfers to the capital program. Starts at about $241,000 and slowly increases to about $357,000 by the end of the forecast. So this operating budget basically is what we'll be calculating the rates upon. Next slide. On the wastewater side, you can see similar type of pattern, but a rather more relaxed annual increase from year to year. Operating costs are starting off just below $300,000 and increasing to about $400,000 by the end of the forecast. That is the blue color. And then capital related stays relatively stable over that planning horizon as well. Next slide. So undertaking the calculations, and I apologize for the complexity of these three, but really on the top set of top table, we're increasing at about right now you're at about an average bill is about $600, and we're increasing about 10% in the first year, 8% in the second, 6, 5, down to 5%, and then staying at relatively stable rates of 5% per year in order to deal with that large, significant capital investment that we put. There's about $5.7 million we're trying to deal with over the 10-year planning horizon. On the wastewater, it's a little bit better. We're starting off at about $350 as an average bill and increasing about 2% over the 10 years. On an average, that works out to about 7% the first year. This, I'm talking to the bottom table right now, down to 6%, and then averaging out at the latter part at about 4% per year. So that takes you from a total bill of about $959 out to $1,500 by the time we hit the end of the 10-year forecast. Next slide. If we just take a look at the comparative information, you can see we've looked at your bill relative to a number of different municipalities. You're in the middle part. Currently, you're increasing to just over $1,000 as your annual bill. And you can see that it's marginally above places like White River and Hearst and Sault Ste. Marie, but considerably below Hornepayne, Red Lake, and Ear Falls. Next slide. So just lastly, you need to develop this financial plan that has to be submitted to the province. It basically, in very simple terms, takes the information we just undertook for your rate study and it translates it into a financial statement type of format. Next slide. And really, it needs to be at least 6 years. So the current year plus an extra 5 in filing. It's generally consistent with, or the forecast way of doing it, it's consistent with how we've done our forecast. But as I say, we will translate it into the provincially mandated format, and we'll prepare that for submission to the province. Next slide. And I won't spend any time on it, but basically, when you see the report, you'll see the two reports. The rate study is really taking a look more on the capital and operating budgets that you normally receive as part of your annual budget process. This other document is going to be almost like the financial statements you receive. So when we send it to you, must be submitted to the province, and then it must be available on the website. Next slide. And I won't spend any time, but this is just the difference between the two different documents. We'll explain it in our study. Slide. Let's go to the end. So this my final slide. So part of this process is at the end of the day for council to consider the capital program, consider the operating, and then the associated rates. And then based on that, we can finalize the document for submission to the province. That concludes my my presentation. I think I'm right on 20 minutes.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much for adhering to our schedule. Councillor Hatfield? No. Well, it seems like you've sir, you've wowed us. I'm not sure which, but I did. I wanted to expertise. Your presentation was, you know, for such a large sub. You've definitely made it easy to understand, so I appreciate that. So the matters for council's consideration, will we be receiving like a draft report that will outline the different per water rates that we will eventually be approving?
Yes, we've through you, we've provided that document today to staff for their review, and I'm sure it'll be subsequently distributed to all council members. Perfect.
Question, I think this might be a question more for Manuela, is I noted earlier on that currently we do not separate the water and wastewater reserves, but you have Is that something that we will be doing in the future?
No, you're right. We don't do it currently. They're combined. When we did this project, we decided on 70% for water and 30 for wastewater. So that would be a council decision if you'd like us to prepare reports going forward in that manner.
Excellent. I would certainly agree with that recommendation if that's something that,
To it further, and I can bring it forward with the budget.
perfect.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, those were, but thank you very much again for the excellent report, and I look forward after it is reviewed by staff.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. And just to indicate, the staff were fantastic in working with us, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
You as well. Excellent. So now we will move on to item number 5, adoption of minutes. 5.1, corporate planning meeting, November 1st. May I have a motion? Councillor Cannon? Councillor Rapato seconding. All in favor? Motion approved. 6, business arising out of previous minutes. There is none. New business. 7.1, proposed 2023 council meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mayor. Shared with council is the proposed 23 council meeting scheduled dates for the Committee of the Whole and the regular minutes. Traditionally, council has held their meetings on the first and third Tuesday of every month. And during the summer months, reduced down to one meeting as well for the month of December. Given that the first Tuesday in January was January 3rd, and we are closed until January 3rd due to the holidays, we have in January moved the meetings to the 2nd and 4th dates, but in front of council is a proposed schedule. Following the regular meeting is a resolution to adopt this schedule. This is normal practice to set out the schedule so council and also when the meetings are held and can make preparations ahead of time.
Is there any? Excellent. Thank you very much. New deputy mayor schedule for the 2022-2026.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a requirement that the municipality set out deputy mayor in the event the mayor is not able to fulfill. There are many ways that council can look at setting out a deputy mayor schedule. It could be an appointment also for the full 4 years. It could be divided by year, by month, whatever works. Staff is presenting to council tonight is that based on council experience, starting with the most experienced, we would recommend that have opportunity to act as deputy mayor. And for year 1, Mitch Hatfield, Councillor Hatfield, be the appointee to be the deputy. Kathy Cannon in year 2, Councillor Rapato in year 3, and Councillor Hoffman in. This is only one recommended way to share the deputy mayor duties. If any councillor changes their mind as council continues on its term, this can be brought back up and changes made at that time. But this is our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments?
It's a long time, Lori. You wouldn't want months for every one of us, every 3 months?
We had considered that. The schedule becomes quite confusing then. And given that we have 2 members of council, the newly elected councillor with limited experience, we felt it fair that we go year by year. But again, that is council's decision and
To be changed tonight.
no, but this will be adopted by council meeting. We need someone to step in immediately in the event there was any type of emergency. So if council approves recommendation tonight, it can be brought back to council and changed afterwards in time for tonight's motion.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll agree that it's going to stay as is. Okay, we're fine with how it's presented. Item 7.3, dissolution of the Wawa BIA.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council were provided a letter from the Wawa Business Improvement Association on December 8th. Letter sent to council is from the chair of the Business Improvement Association stating that the board passed a motion requesting that council consider disbanding and dissolving the Wawa BIA. This decision had attached is one that management sends to council with regret, but is one that has been under consideration by the board for many years as business community shrinks, our volunteer base shrinks, and the board had much not just getting quorum at meetings, but also getting business members to sit on the board. So it is with regret they ask council that council begin the dissolve the Wawa BIA. According to the Municipal Act, Municipal Council approves the bylaw and is also responsible to dissolve. And Section 211 of the Municipal Act says that council must give notice of its intention to pass a dissolution bylaw to the members, which basically are the member businesses and property owners that live along Broadway Avenue, down Mission, approximately the Wawa Motor Inn. So we would have to provide notice to those members and provide them a 60-day comment period to provide comment to council if they were in favor of or object to the dissolution. Once we go through that process and issue notice, we would bring back a resolution to council for a vote on the dissolution process. Likely the 60-day notice period is met. There is currently a review of the assets of the Wawa BIA because upon dissolution, all the assets, liabilities, or revenues that sit in the property and responsibility of the municipality. Time we don't believe the Wawa BIA has any other assets other than the Christmas lights and banners, and we have to review the financials just to make sure that that's been collected in the past to pay for. There'll be an audit required for 2022 and for 2023, and so we will meet again with the BIA and come back to council to make sure upon recommending council for dissolution that there are sufficient funds for all expenses. And for the 2023 operating budget for council is that after review with the treasurer, we believe there is sufficient funds that the BIA currently holds that came from the Wawa business community to cover all anticipated costs. Therefore, we will be putting in the 2023 operating budget a zero budget for the Wawa BIA, which means that no monies will be levied in 2023 amongst the members. Now, the risk with that is if council moves forward and determines not to dissolve the BIA, that timing of the approval of the operating budget may have an impact where we would have to make adjustments. We send out a levy notice and include any revenues required for the BIA through 2023 are included in the municipal budget. So that's just a risk, but not one that we can't deal with. It just means we have to keep an eye on the impact to the 23 budget. We will again provide further information, council, on any of the liabilities and the financial situation, but at this we are recommending that council accept the letter submitted by the and that council direct staff to begin the notice period required for the 60-day comments and determine if dissolution proceedings should move forward to council in March.
Are there any questions, Council? Councillor Cannon?
Maury, with the dissolution, who takes over things like the banners and the light plants and whose responsibility are we not going to have it anymore? Like, does it just go away?
Yeah, so all the projects, all those things fall to the responsibility of the municipality, fall to municipal council to determine if that's or an offering that we continue as a municipality to offer our community that the BIA previously offered. So the BIA had recognized over the past that it was struggling, and so many nets and responsibilities were already turned over to the municipality. So the municipality is already in charge of making sure that we put the Christmas lights up, that they're working. We are responsible to plant the flowers and put out the planters in the summer. So a lot of those responsibilities had already shifted to the municipality. All BIA would help to provide funds to the municipality to undertake some of these works. That will be lost. Of staff, we feel that we can accommodate all those services within the upcoming budget and staff commitments, but council could certainly look at that service level and offering those things as part of the 2023 budget, because essentially it falls to the municipality now whether we offer those or not moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Maury.
Councillor Opato, Councillor Hoffman? Pardon? If I can summarize the thoughts of council, are we in agreement that staff, I guess we're not doing that yet? Yeah, okay. That we're in agreement that we accept the recommendation made by staff? Item 7.4 of council and council member appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. Council was provided a list of the 2022-26 committee appointments required of council. Tonight, I am recommending that council receive my report regarding those appointments, that it further council consider my recommendation that we dissolve two existing committees of the previous term of council, one being the Community Development Committee, passed by a bylaw of council in 2019, and in number two, the committee referred to Safety and Wellbeing is approved by council in 2022. And further, that staff advertise for the filling of all public citizen appointees, that council may choose to sit on any of its committees as set out in the attached list of committees and boards, save and except for our recommendation that council not advertise for the one public appointment made to the Wawa Police Services Board. And we recommend that council reappoint its existing public representative, being Mr. Chris Buckle, to sit on the Wawa Police Services Board until such time as the new Superior East OPP Regional Detachment Board be formed, which is by the end of 2023. As background, I'd just like to highlight a few important committees, if I may, from the report, Mayor. Number one, some of those boards and committees include the following: the Algoma Public Health Unit, of which the previous term of council, Councillor Mitch Hatfield represents communities. The communities of Wawa, White River, and Dubai are eligible to elect or nominate one member of the board to sit on the Algoma Health Unit. The covers the entire Algoma district, and appointments for board representatives are made basically broken down by population. So communities together pick one representative to sit on the board. That has to be approved by each of the communities by resolution. As those other communities, we have reached out to determine if they have any representative to nominate for representation on this board. Tonight, we're not recommending that council appoint anyone to the committee, but look at this matter at its next, once we hear back from those communities, if they have any appointments. And if they do not, then we would recommend at that time that council consider appointing from amongst themselves or further advertising to the public for a representative, which is a possibility. We will bring that particular appointment back to the January 10th meeting unless council wishes to appoint someone this evening. Couple of I think self-explanatory. There are boards that they aren't necessarily municipal committees, but there are legislations passed that require council to these boards, and that includes services board. Mayor Pino has agreed to sit on the board subject to council's approval. The Missinaba Forest Management Board, we have Councillor Cannon, who's agreed to sit on the board, and council will be provided some background information, but we sit on this board as a non-voting member. There are voting members that really, it's the combination of the old Magpie Forest Management Area, the Algoma Forest Management Area, and Chapleau Missinaba Forest Area, together for one board. As a non-voting member, it is only the members of the industries and First Nations that sit as the voting members, but we have an obligation to sit on that board. And of course, the Lady Professionals Recruitment Committee, it is a committee of the Lady Dunn Health Center, but we appoint a representative to sit on that committee, and it meets quarterly. Excuse me. Covered the important points of my report. So I will suggest, Mayor, that you might want to review those committees and appointments or agree with the attachment, and then there'll be an approving resolution put on the regular meeting tonight.
Thank you very much, Maury. Councillor Hatfield, do you have any questions?
Can you hear me? What is committees like the Heritage Committee and all those committees?
My recommendation would they would continue, and council would appoint a representative this evening. The Heritage here with your name as a potential council appointee, and so then we go out. All council, their terms follow the term of council. So all those members, using the Heritage Committee as the example, their terms expired on November 2022. So we would go out and public looking for anyone who wishes to put their name forward. We would bring that back to council on January, would make it selections for all the committees listed in the attachment.
Okay, so it's just the Heritage Committee, and what else? What other committees are?
If you look at the chart that's attached to my report, if you can see it, and it was shared
Oh,
with.
there it is. I'm sorry, I didn't go down far enough.
So the committees include, thank you.
Library Board.
The Library Board, Marina Committee, the Age Friendly Committee, the Cemetery Committee, the Heritage Committee, the Emergency Management Program Committee, the Economic Development and Tourism Advisory Committee,
Okay.
and the boards that I previously referred to. So the committees that we
Okay.
advertise to the public requesting interest.
Okay, my iPad, I didn't go down far enough. Okay, thanks, Maury.
Answer, okay.
Is there any other questions? Does council wish for me to summarize the boards and committees? Okay, perfect. So I'll just start at the top. Myself, Mayor Melanie, the DSAB, so that's the Algoma Social Services Administration Board, Councillor Board, Councillor Hoffman, Police Services Board, Marina Committee, Councillor Hatfield, Age Friendly Committee, Councillor Hoffman. Councillor Opato, Cemetery Committee. Councillor Hatfield, Heritage Committee. Superior East Regional Mayors Group. Mayor Pilon. Emergency Management Committee. That'll be my the CAO, Miss O'Neill and Suzanne Lord. Development and Tourism Advisory Committee, myself. Councillor Cannon, Mishcon River Advisory Committee. Councillor Cannon also has Missinabie Forest Management Board and Lady Dunn Health Professionals Recruitment, Councillor Hatfield. So.
I think it'll be an in-camera question. Thank you.
I'll just remind you, Councillor Hatfield, that in-camera questions can only be very certain, have to follow a certain criteria. Okay. So if there's no objections from council, recommendation to Maury to the list as presented. And we'll move on to item 7.5, the Mishcon Memorial Community Center Canteen Report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The director has fallen ill, so I will speak to his report on canteen. His report does summarize for council the financial 10-year history of the canteen operations and how the canteen was operated and where we find ourselves today. In terms of starting with the summary of our in the report, number one, that council directs staff to issue proposals out to the community and to interested persons to potentially operate the canteen for the remainder of the 2023 being January to March. So if council agrees, we would issue a request for proposals to see if there are any interested private parties, organizations willing to run the canteen. Further, that direct staff to continue to investigate other cost-effective that we can provide and snacks at the Memorial Community Center when warranted. Further, that council directs staffs to encourage and provide opportunities where possible for the nonprofit and volunteer sector to sell foodstuff at the complex, especially tournaments and community events. And finally, confirms that as a cost-saving measure to ensure the long-term viability and sustainability of our community center, not be opened or operated by municipal staff for the remainder of the 2023 winter season ending March 3. And the issue to paraphrase in the director's presentation, I think it's really important that council recognize that the canteen has operated for at least if council would request, I can provide additional financial information beyond 10 years that will show the canteen normally operated even prior at a law. We have not operated the canteen since 2020. It was a decision made because of COVID, and COVID has continued to impact our particularly hitting our community center very hard. And essentially offering the canteen means that council is using property taxes to subsidize the cost of food provided at the canteen. So with the direction of the previous council, that staff the operating budget over the last 4 years within or below the increases of each year. We had to recover from the costs of the COVID impacts on the community, which included complete loss of revenue at our community center. We had to find cost-saving measures throughout the organization, which included finding how we can balance tax increases with user fee that were required to recover the revenues we lost so we could keep our. This was one item that the previous member of council agreed with through the operating budget. That was a low impact item. When we looked at ways that we could continue services to the community, this was one way that we could reduce our costs at the arena given the challenges we faced. Moving forward, there are things that the director and the department, which I'd like noted tonight, to compensate for the canteen being closed. And some of those things council may not be aware, but I think the director sets out in his report that some of the things we're doing is we have opened the bar and provided some through the bar service on Friday nights or during tournaments and large events. So when there is a large hockey tournament and it appears that the number of users to the facility warrant it, we have been offering additional food service through our bar. When there's a really large event, we have been opening up the kitchen, food through the kitchen. We've done that a few times. We recommend that we continue to do this. We're monitoring the cost, the impact on the arena to see, is that a alternative, innovative cost savings way that we can continue to offer some for food service at the arena. So we're continuing to do that, and other things like including the bar, profit groups, the opportunity to sell food to try to alleviate some of the concerns in the community about some food stuff not prime times. Other things that we're doing is making nonprofit groups, which include the minor hockey groups and other associations in town, know that they can to come to the arena, food service, very low cost, so they can raise funds for their own organization. So we are looking at provide food service in a way that is more profitable and doesn't negatively impact property taxes. I the director to give council the history of the canteen operations, and so in summary, we recommend, we put out 3 options. Council could direct staff to open the canteen immediately, understanding it would take us a few weeks to try to figure out how to hire staff and get supplies in, but that is one option for council. The other option is don't open the canteen and don't plan for the canteen to open at all in 2023. Or your option is come back to us at the end of March 2023, tell us how much it cost, what was the profit, what were the pluses or minuses of operating in a new way through the bar or through the kitchen. And so council can make a decision about canteen operations in the fall of 2023 at the start of the next season. Or finally, what's recommended is that, as I started the report with, the recommendations is that we have council direct that staff should put a request for proposals out to the community to see if there's anyone, any business, any nonprofit group, or any individual who wants to operate the canteen for the municipality. And we can do that basically right away. And that we continue to work with other user groups in new methods, investigate whether vending machines are options, and to find new ways to deliver food service at the community center for large events and large tournaments if impact the 2023 budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maury. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Hatfield?
I'm sorry I don't feel the same way that the staff does. The hockey tournaments are the tournaments going on the weekend. On Sunday, those people only have Tim Hortons and the Subway. But I've had several people call, would like it opened again. And so after 12 years, your total expenses loss was 14,000? Is that the way that works?
Thank you, Councillor Hatfield, for pointing that out. To inform council, as is highlighted in the report, we don't have a full cost accounting budget that treats the canteen as a separate cost center. So what's not included in this loss statement are actually the additional expenses I noted in the report. None of the canteen maintenance budget, which is budgeted at about $2,500 a year, that's not budget because it's shown in building maintenance budget. Additionally, time. So the director's time to oversee the canteen, hire the people, order supplies, our treasury staff that have to make sure that the money is collected and deposited. There's a lot of staff time and annual maintenance that's not shown because the director's salaries aren't distributed and shown as distributed wages in that canteen. So I think we estimate an additional, it's in the report and I've forgotten, $2,500 to $5,000 more on top per year. So it's not showing the true cost or deficit to run the canteen.
So Maury, so if we can say 20 to 25,000, and Manuela, if I might ask, how many houses would that be? Like, what is the we said how many houses per year? An average would be about $36. So we're basically not collecting taxes from 7 to 8 houses in order to keep the canteen open.
So it's 25,000 a year we lose?
So we're basically foregoing collecting taxes from 8 houses.
We've never made money at the arena, Melanie, ever. Oh, the budget at the arena, do we go, is it every year, right? We don't make money at the arena because we provide a service, right?
My response to that is yes, the municipality and its taxpayers subsidize the operation Memorial Community Center, which includes curling, fitness classes, and all the activities are subsidized. We are subsidizing, however, at a much higher rate for those operations than other communities. So we're subsidizing slightly more than 90% of operating that facility for our community to use that. And that is, again, a service level decision and a decision of council. But from a financial perspective, what we have been doing as a staff with council's endorsement in the past is understanding that we need to recover more funds from the users of the facility to operate the facility for the long-term sustainability. Thank you.
So you're looking at raising the fees on everything that's used there.
We have been, Councillor Hatfield, at least since I've come 4 years ago, we've been consistently and systematically raising the arena. For example, the arena hourly rates for all hockey ice users. We've been raising the rates at the curling. We've been raising the rates, but there is a limit. We do recognize as a staff, and I know all agrees, there's only so much you can raise an hourly rate per year until it has a real negative impact. So we're constricted to raise the rates. And again, speaking just for this council as a guideline from the past council, the rates equivalent to the cost index. Last year, I think the cost of living was about 2.5 to 3%. So that's about an average that we raise the user fee. So we are trying to raise revenues as revenues are decreasing due to costs, aging community, a number of factors, which also was exacerbated by COVID hitting us. To balance out the need to raise revenues with affecting our community and our community center, but recognizing, I think, to your point, that municipalities traditionally and the majority of and that to offer that service in a community does require subsidy by all taxpayers, if that's answering your question.
So rink is the only rink the deficit as it has? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I've said. No, and I don't have the information to answer that question.
Oh, because you said earlier, didn't you just say that?
Saying we're the community center costs,
You mentioned
90% meeting the cost community center, not including the management replacement costs us, and we're only raising the revenue equivalent of about 10% of the cost. So all our user fees are only paying, and we can give you actual figures if you would like, based on the 21 budget. We can give you 22 when we're finished out the year. We're only collecting 10% of the revenues that it cost us to operate the community center as a whole.
Thank
Well-
you very much, Maury. I'll take this opportunity to thank you very much for your report. So the point of order goes Councillor Hatfield, the Mayor, Councillor Cannon, Councillor Pato. So I'll take my opportunity to speak. Thank you very much for your report. I found it very enlightening, and I think this is the first time that we are going to encounter the issue where what we consider essential services, because I think we all agree that Mishpawton Community Center is, but when we come down to breath, non-essential service that is the heart of the community. Our essential services are the infrastructure and really basically keeping our lights on. So I do really like option 3, to continue to offer the canteen options, events through the bar and through I think as we continue to receive presentations from Watson and Associates where we hear that we have major investments in our infrastructure, in our water and wastewater, have to continually rely on our ratepayers. I think we need to really take that into a lot of consideration. And my last thought is if there was a high demand for, I think we would be making a profit. I think if the users of the Mishpawton Community Center, if they wanted the canteen, they would be using the canteen. And I think all business owners, I think, can agree on that. Councillor Cannon?
I agree to going out there and for a minimal fee to try it out from January till the end of the term and then reevaluating it. But a lot of different things that don't make money. And we have over the years. So I know we have to start somewhere buckling down, but you continue taking things community, then the hockey tournaments, people don't want to come. So then you're going to lose revenue there. My guess is we have to find a solution and try and find somebody to run it, I think is the best right. But if nobody comes forward, we have to really look at this, like I said, we subsidize other places that don't make money. And I mean, is it going to stopping subsidizing them, each one that doesn't make money? I mean, we might have to, I guess.
Council,
I'd like to see the canteen go. I have a lot of people ask me about it. I just find it particular that we're running a bar over a canteen. People that use the arena rather have a canteen. Over the weekend, when the hockey tournament comes in, there is money generated. There's a fee that they pay to have a hockey tournament. Well, the arena has income coming in that weekend. Why isn't that rolled in for the whole building? Percentages towards the canteen operator. There is money coming in. It's not that we're not making any money that weekend. I mean that the canteen isn't making anything coming in for the weekend. I'd like to see the canteen go.
Councillor,
Total agreement. I'd like to see the canteen open. And I've also talked to one of our bartenders at the curling rink. She ran the canteen before COVID, and she would be willing to run the concession again. I know there might be days where there's nothing going on, and then we say, okay, it's closed, but on weekends, if you're having a tournament or something, and you get these people coming from out of town, and they're sitting there, where do we get a coffee? Where do we get a snack? And if the restaurants aren't open, I heard one comment was that the team from Timmins came and they had a cooler full of Subway sandwiches because they knew there was nothing available in Wawa. So I want to see.
sure, Councillor Hatfield.
Would, if we did find a person to run the canteen, the initial cost to that person would be really big. I'm wondering if the township would help that person with the first purchase, she could pay them back, and then she could run the canteen. Is that a possibility?
I think that would be a reasonable possibility the director would consider based on any responses. And I think that would have to come to council. This will impact the 2023 budget. Any costs will impact ultimately the tax increase for council. So it's all a possibility that I think the director says in his report that we would basically look at break even. We're not potential operator, a large money. We would just like to see at the end of the day the revenue and the cost be neutral, cost the taxpayers zero. So that decision would have to be made depending on the proposal put forward.
I believe that we've heard the opinions of council on this subject. Thing that I will remind council is that our vision is to achieve sustainability, and it's my fear that we are not achieving sustainability with these types of decisions. Certainly, go ahead.
I disagree. Some things you have to make a decision, and yes, for eight. But I mean, if we look for somebody to run it at a minimal fee, and like Councillor Mitt said, you know, can we start and they pay it back? Then we're looking to the future.
Well, and I hope that you're and we'll move on from there.
Thank you. So I think I should just, there is no motion or resolution on the regular meeting tonight to ensure that council had more opportunity to review the report and think about the great discussion tonight. But I could ask council and direct staff to implement option 3, which is to proceed with offering an RFP. That would be step one, from what that we create and advertise an RFP for the operation of the canteen for 3 season, and maybe we can start there and bring this back to council back in January for their motion or resolution in terms of direction.
So is that what we heard, council, or did I hear open the canteen in January? Option 3, Councillor Hatfield, would you prefer option 2 or option 3?
I'll go with option 3.
Councillor Opato?
I'd just like to see the canteen open, whatever option everybody agrees on. I'd just like to see it open.
So did you, option 19 and option 3 is offer an RFP to citizen or group to open it.
If we don't find anybody to run it, I'd still like to see it run. So that's,
I'm hearing option 2 from Councillor Hatfield.
It's, I want to see the canteen open. I would like to offer it to who you're talking to, Jim, and I would like to see us help her to get going, because I think that's going to be something that's going to work. So I don't know what option that is.
If I may, Mayor, I would ask council to consider a recommendation that a request for proposals. We are closed at the facility from roughly December 24th to January 3rd with a day or two open in between, but we can offer the RFP in the next couple of days and come back to council at its first regular meeting and report to council whether anyone responded to the RFP, and then we'll start at that regular meeting so council can have an official vote on whether they open the canteen or approve an RFP response we received at that time. It gives us sufficient time to prepare the RFP, get it out and get responses and bring back to council in very early January, an option for council to indicate its will.
That's fine with me, Mayor.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Session, there's none. Business arising from closed session, none. Next meeting date, Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. Close of meeting at 8:07. Do you read something? Do we need a motion, or are you going to read something to close the meeting? Oh, okay. May I have somebody make a motion to close? Councillor Hatfield? All in favor? Carried. Don't have to apologize. No. Not at all. I can't. Nope, we're not going to take a break. Well, unless you need one. Yeah. at 8:10 p.m. Item number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councillor Cannon.
I, Councillor Kathy Cannon, declare a potential indirect pecuniary interest on agenda item 6.1, legal issue.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cannon. Item 3, approval of the agenda.
Resolve that. I apologize, but I believe that's Councillor Hoffman. Sorry, first time seeing the signature. Moved by Councillor Hoffman, second by Councillor Cannon. Resolved that the agenda for the regular meeting of council scheduled for Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 be approved as amended.
All in favor? Carried. Item number 4, delegations and presentations. There are none, so we'll move on to announcements and giving notice. I'd like to start off with an announcement. I'm pleased to announce that the municipality has received from the Ontario Trillium Foundation $130,000 to be used to upgrade the running track at the sports field. The funding will be used to provide a much safer and improved running surface. This track is important to the community and our local and regional schools who use the track to host competitive events. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Ontario Trillium and the Government of Ontario. I would also wish to extend my thanks and appreciation to Alex Patterson and his team for submitting a successful application, and look forward to continued improvements at the community. Other announcements, notices for the committee of the whole meeting and the regular. Does anybody have any to add? For announcements? Okay, perfect. Then we'll move on to adoption.
Moved by Councillor Cannon. Hoffman. Resolved that the following minutes of the meeting of council be adopted as presented. Minutes of a regular meeting of council held Tuesday, November 1st, 20 on pages 1 to 3 inclusive of the minute book. Minutes of a regular meeting of council held on Tuesday, November 15th, 2022 as contained on pages 1 to 3 inclusive of the minute book. Minutes of a special meeting of council held on Friday, November 8th as contained on pages 1 to 2 inclusive of the minute book. Minutes of council held on Wednesday, November 18th, 2022 is contained on pages 1 to 2 inclusive of the minute book.
All in favor? Carried. Item number 7, correspondence. There's multiple items of correspondence for our review. Maury, is there anything that you'd like to point out in the items?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for asking. Global Public Health has sent their request for funds from the municipality 23, and it's just over 2022. So although it is an increase, we're very happy that the increase will be manageable. Number 2, that the letter from the Honorable Carolyn Mulroney, the Ontario Minister of Transportation, we were surprised but grateful to accept some additional COVID funds for our transit system. We are provided a grant of $5,000, which was unanticipated, to cover some of those additional COVID costs, such as like cleaning supplies and the materials that were provided on our transit system in an effort to keep people safe. So the base amount provided is $5,000, and we are claims for additional funds if required. The other correspondence is basically congratulations to this council from our premier and from our MPP Michael Mantha, and any other questions council can certainly ask me at any time if they have any inquiries.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just bring your attention to the Zoom call. I'm not sure if this is what people can see on the screen.
Must have hit. I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay, perfect. So we'll move on to item number 8 on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Hoffman, seconded by Councillor Cannon. Resolved that the items listed under the consent agenda, item 8.2 to 8.7, be approved as recommended.
Are there any questions? All in favor? Great. Item number 9, staff reports.
Resolved by Councillor Alpado, seconded by Councillor Hatfield. Resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Wawa does hereby receive staff reports AP 22-08 MMCC Canteen, a copy of which is attached here too, and CAO 2022-07, appointment of council to committees and boards 2022 to 2026.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Item number 10, business arising out of previous minutes. There is nothing, so we'll move on to number 11, new business.
Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Pado, resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Wawa does hereby appoint municipal councillors to be deputy mayor for the term of council November 15th, 2022 to November 14th, 2026 as follows. Councillor Hatfield for the period November 15th to November 14th, 2020. Councillor Cannon for the period November 23 to November 24. Councillor Pado for the period November 24 to November 25. And Councillor November 25 to November 20.
All in favor? Carried. 11.2.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Pado, resolved that the Council of the Corporation Municipality of Wawa does hereby appoint Mayor Melanie Pino as the council representative to the Algoma District Services.
Carried. 11.3.
Resolved, moved by Councillor Pado, seconded by Councillor Hatfield, resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Wawa does hereby appoint the members of council to the various boards committees according to the list attached hereto.
All in favor? Carried. 11.4.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Pado, whereas the Police Services Act, RSO 1990, Chapter 15, Section 27, 4B, provides that municipalities shall appoint one person who is neither a member of the council nor an employee of the municipality to the Police Services Board. And whereas the members has confirmed interest to be reappointed as a community representative to the Municipality of Wawa Police Services Board, now therefore be resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Wawa does hereby reappoint Mr. Chris Buckle to serve on the Wawa as the community representative effective December 13th, 2022 for the term of council.
All in favor? Carried. Item number 12, notice of motion. There is nothing. Item number 13, bylaws.
Moved by Councillor Pado, second by Councillor Hatfield, resolved that the following bylaws be introduced and read a second and third time and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. Bylaw number 3546-23, to confirm the proceedings of council at its meetings held on the 14th day of November, the 18th day of November, the 23rd day of November, the 30th day of November, and the 13th day of December. Bylaw number 3-23, to adopt an emergency management program and emergency response plan and to meet other requirements under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. 3548 to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the townships of Hornpain, White River, and Dubreuilville for the municipality of Wawa to provide GIS and related services to each partner community. Bylaw number 3549-23, number 3311-20, and extend the Crescent Engineering Services to appoint bylaw number 3551-23, an integrity commissioner for the corporation of the municipality of Wawa. Bylaw number 523, to appoint a clerk and issuer of marriage licenses for the municipality of Wawa. Bylaw number 3553-23, to appoint a secretary treasurer to the municipality of Wawa Committee of Adjustment. Bylaw number 3554-23, to authorize civil marriage solemnization service in the municipality of Wawa. Bylaw number 3555-23, to repeal municipality of Wawa bylaw number 3153-18, and to appoint a community energy management coordinator for the municipality to the standards established by regulation under the Emergency Management and Civil RSO Chapter E9 as amended. Bylaw number 355623, to enter into a municipal easement agreement outlining a right-of-way grant a license for ingress and egress between the municipality of Wawa and Algoma Ferris Industries, Inc.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Councillor Hatfield?
We're going to appoint a clerk, and who is it going to be?
Yes. Which item number?
It's 13.8.
It's 3553, to appoint a clerk and issue marriage licenses. And it will be appointing Maury O'Neill, the CAO, as the clerk.
You're going to,
Required under law for council to have a clerk. It's a mandatory position. With the retirement of our clerk, Kathy, Friday, the 16th, this bylaw appoints me of Friday the 16th.
so it's an intern thing till you hire a clerk.
That's for further discussion by council. This time I'm being appointed as clerk. It'll be discussed by council certainly in the future. Under the in-camera item saying appointment of, there's an in-camera item pertaining to that. But regardless of that discussion, council must and shall appoint a clerk for the municipality, and that is required almost as our clerks, our current clerks' last day is this Friday, the 16th.
And we have had nobody in training for that?
I have been in training for that.
Okay.
And all in favor?
Oh, too late.
All in favor? Or yeah, okay. Item number 14, closed session. Moving into closed session.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Cannon, Councillor Hoffman. Resolved that this in camera at 8:25 p.m. in order to address the following matters pertaining to item number 14.2, legal issues, 2 items. Number 1, an offer to, number 2, an additional offer to purchase property, and they are related, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or a local board. The other item in camera relating to a property standards complaint, and that is in camera since it fits being a personal matter about an identifiable individual. The final matter is related to a legal issue, staffing, and it's about a personal matter about an identifiable municipal or local board employee.
Thank you very much. Was that was a motion?
Yes.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Daniel. Next meeting date, Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. Item number 17, adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Hoffman, seconded by Councillor Cannon. We close at 9:56 p.m.
All in favor?
Thank you.